Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let's begin looking at the fundamentals of money. Now, everybody uses money, and so when we begin to understand where it came from and what the denominations and those kinds of things are, we begin to grasp better how we can do better with our money or understand its uses. So, if you'll take out your Cornell notes, now I've applied those or I've put those Cornell notes out there for you. Make certain it's your own copy of it and fill it out like the other little video showed you. So this particular one, the essential question is going to be, how can we do better with money? And so now the topic is going to be principles of money. Now, as we begin to look, remember, walk along, make some notes, ask some questions as we go. So let's begin here. The first thing I want you to see is that money refers to something generally accepted as a medium of exchange, a measure of value, or a means of payments. Now, that medium means a way. It's how we exchange. So money is what we exchange so we can buy something, so we can have something. So that's the definition we're going to use for money as we talk about it. Now, there are some basic functions of money, basic things it does. And the first one is that medium of exchange, that opportunity to trade it back and forth for the products that you want and them to buy products from you. So that's that trading back and forth. Now, money also, that's the first. The second is money also stores its value. So what it means is that the dollar is a dollar. It's not going to be a dollar and it's going to be less. It's always going to be a dollar. So it's going to hold its purchasing power, and that is supported by the government. The last thing, it's a unit of account. And what that means is that it's a common price. It's not going to be, I put it as a dollar and you're going to pay $1.25 for it, or that's a suggestion here. So it tells us what is it worth. So when you go like to the gas station, it says up there gas is $1.89. That means for every gallon of gas, it's $1.89.9. So it's really $1.90 for every gallon you purchase. If you purchase more gallons, still the same. That's the medium of our account, or the unit of accounting. Now, the price can change, but the dollar value is still the same. So the price of gas may go up, and you've got to spend more dollars to buy that. The price of gas may go down, you'll spend less dollars, but the dollar will still be worth what it is. So now we've got some, in the United States, in most places, we have about 4 different kinds of currency. And we're going to talk specifically about those. So it's coins, paper money, banknotes, and government bonds. Now let's look at this idea of coins. Now we all know what a coin is, but it's usually coins are almost always a metal, something that is hard. Now, years and years ago, they might have been a piece of clay or something like that, but now it's metal, and so we have these metal coins. And in the U.S., they're made of copper, zinc, nickel, and brass, and they are stamped. They are flat and round. Though I showed a picture in the class of a Hong Kong coin that has some scalloping on it. So it's not perfectly round. It's more of the idea of it's round, but it's got some other edging for it. There are also some Chinese coins that have holes through them, and those holes are significant. But in the US, it's typically flat and round. Now, you can see there's different kinds of coins. We've got the penny, and you can look over that and see. We've got the penny, we've got the nickel, we've got our dime and a quarter. We've got a half dollar. We don't see a lot of dollar coins. They tried to put them in. I'm not certain how well people use those, but that is the largest one is a dollar coin. Now, besides dollars or coins, we have paper money. Now, paper money, the government says, is legal tender. And what that means is, the word tender means, is that it's legal to use to trade. I'm going to stop for a moment. It's legal to use to trade. And so the country or a country's bank kind of keeps that flow of money going. and it tends to update with versions, which sometimes they add security features, things that weren't in there before. Used to be all of ours were green on paper, and now they've got magnetic strips in them and other things to make them where they can't be counterfeited or reproduced. So let's look at the paper money. We've got the dollar bill you're real familiar with George Washington. The $2 bill we don't see as much of with Thomas Jefferson. We've got the $5 bill with Abraham Lincoln on it. The $10 bill with Alexander Hamilton, who actually was the founder kind of our financial system in the first. That is the same Hamilton that the musical Broadway musical is done on. You have the $20 bill with Andrew Jackson. You have the $50 bill with Ulysses S. Grant and the $100 bill with Benjamin Franklin. So when they say, let me see your Benjamins, they're talking about that $100 bill. Now, there have been larger bills in the past. There was a $1,000 bill. On the $1,000 bill, they got rid of it because it was too easy for people in the black market and drug dealers to pass money quickly in very small quantities. So now they have to do it in hundreds, whereas they have to have 10 100s to make 1,000, which is a little bit bigger than that thin piece of paper. So they did reduce it to $100 bills being our largest of our bills. There are also things called banknotes. Now, banknotes are promissory notes, and what that means is they are notes that says that the Federal Reserve Bank, that is a bank, and we're going to look at that. It is a national bank that they promise that they will pay the face value of it. So that's a bank note. It is payable to the bearer, and that means if you have it, it's payable to you. So whoever holds it, it's payable to. And it can be used just as cash also. There are government bonds. Now, a bond is, for them, the government may sell you a bond, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to raise money for something. A lot of governments, city governments will sell bonds to raise money for a new sewage system or a new water treatment or roads or things like that. And so they issue it, and it is backed by the government. They issue this bond, and then they promise to pay it. Now, they're usually sold with a maturity date, meaning it may be a 2-year bond, and at 2 years you can get its full face value. And so those kind of one of those things, they're slow growing, but they're pretty guaranteed. And so sometimes they're called treasuries because they're sold by that Treasury Department. They come in off different links, and we're going to look at those 3 links: the Treasury bond, the Treasury bill, the Treasury note. So let's move on to that. The first is our Treasury bonds. They're called T-bonds in the market. They're our longest ones. They typically don't mature for 20 to 30 years. And you say, man, that's a long time. Yes, it is, but you can buy them really cheap, and it has a larger amount in that 20 years or 30 years that it's worth. They have a high interest rate too, meaning the government's paying a higher interest rate for you to invest in a long term on them. And so they also will send you some payment with Treasury bonds. So that dividend is that interest. They're paying you for the interest, just like you might pay if you were getting a loan. You would pay for the principal, the amount that you owe or that you borrowed, plus more called interest. They're just making periodic interest payments. So they're just paying the interest, and they're going to pay you the full amount when you get to the end. Now, that is our Treasury bond. Treasury notes are a type of bond, a government bond, that are shorter. They're shorter than our T-bonds. They're typically 5 to 10 years. They have a little bit lower interest rate because they're not holding them as long. And they also receive every 6 months that interest payment. So we have Treasury bonds. We have Treasury notes that are 5 to 7 years or 5 to 10 years. And then the last one we have are called T-bills or Treasury bills. Now, those last literally weeks. So they may be up to a year. You may buy it for a short amount of time. You might pay, look at the illustration, you might pay $9,600 for a T-bill, and it has a $10,000 value. So in 5 to 6 months, you're going to get $10,000, where you only paid 96. So they are worth it. They're shorter. So if you're trying to save money, like for a car or something, you might put it in a T-bill or a T-bond, and see what you can do and save that money so it'll be worth more when you get there. All right. We also have things that we call financial exchange, which are cash, credit cards, debit cards, personal checks, and electronic fund transfers. Now, we pretty much know what cash is. We go in, we reach in our pocket, pull out that paper money to pay any debt. And it says on there, it is legal tender for any debt. And so you can always pay with cash. Now, there are companies that prefer you to pay with credit card, but legally they have to accept the cash. Okay, widely accepted. There are debit cards. Now, debit card, it looks like a credit card, but it's a way for you not to have to carry as much cash, but it comes directly out of your account when you put it in, when you buy something. It is just like carrying cash from the standpoint of cash goes out. As soon as you put that debit card in and purchase something, it's going to remove that amount of money from your checking account or savings account, whatever it's tied to, and it's going to put it into their account. So if you don't have enough money, you can't purchase that much with it. It will decline it. All right. So that's our debit card. It is purely based on the money you have in the bank at that moment, or actually in that account in that moment. Now, we also have credit cards. Now, credit cards are really you borrowing money. And people say, oh, but isn't that the great thing to do? No, because you have to pay that back. When we talked about our interest payments that the government's going to pay you, guess what? You're going to have to pay interest on that, on whatever you put on a credit card if you don't pay it off the first of the month. If you pay it off every month, and there are plenty of people who use their credit card, pay it off every month, maybe they pick up airline miles or something like that, cash back, that's all good and fine. But when you stop paying it off each month, it's going to accumulate. And honestly, credit card companies want you to accumulate because they want you paying more for what you want to purchase. It's being gratified or getting what I want today, but I can't afford it until tomorrow. And so they charge you for that. That means if you bought, let's say you bought a computer we talked about for $1,000. In 18 months, when you paid it off, you probably paid somewhere around $1,200 to $1,300 for that computer. If you had paid cash, it'd have been $1,000. You paid it out, it's costing you $1,200. So they're going to make their money, pardon me, they're going to make their money on you going into debt. And the problem is, once you get into debt, it's very difficult to get out. So my suggestion is avoid credit cards. I know people think they're the thing. They really are not. They're going to cause more problems for you in the future. The last we're going to look at is our personal checks. And I don't know if you see that very often because we use so many things, we pay so many things online, but that's when you physically pull out that check, that paper, and you write it down and you mail it to them or you give it to them over the counter. That is a check. Now, I used to laugh as a kid. My grandfather would go in a small town, would go into a place to eat or whatever, and they would have a blank check, and he would just write his name. They'd say which bank, and they'd pull out that bank checks. He would write his name on the bottom, on the top of it, and he would sign it, and then they would turn it over to that bank, and the bank would pay for it. Now there's so much fraud and all that they really watch those things. If you've seen the movie Catch Me If You Can, that's all about that forging of checks. But personal checks are still used. I know we still use them to pay things that we mail in. All right. The last is electronic funds. Now, here's what that means. That your bank will take directions, and you give them a lot of this, all kinds of numbers, these routing numbers and account numbers for you to send money from your account to another account, or for you to get money from another account. Now, they charge quite a bit for this. I used to get, when I had a construction company, I was paid by electronic fund transfers. And so they would say on this particular date, they're going to transfer $50,000, $100,000 into my account. It was a big construction company. So it cost me about $20, $30 each time they did that. But if you're looking for a $50,000 check or a $100,000 check, $20, $30 is not a big deal. But it allows me to have money sent someplace else, kind of like Western Union. We have some things that do it on a small terms now called Zelle and other things where you can send somebody electronic funds and they don't charge you for that, which is kind of nice. But usually the bank does charge you for it. All right, so that's our electronic funds. We're going to look some at our, why don't we stop taking notes there, and I will start a new video. Thanks. Make certain you clean up your notes, and then we will work from there our next video.